Before I start with this week's content, does anybody have any questions about last week or any issues with anything?
I had a question.
Okay, go ahead.
That project that's due today. What's the latest that we could turn in?
So I'm going to give you guys some time. What I've done is I imported everything in from last semester, and it's supposed to automatically adjust dates, but last semester we had a holiday on one of the days, so all of those dates are off. So it actually had said up until yesterday that the due date was, I think, the 21st. So if you guys, some of you probably just assumed you had more time, so I'll give you a little extra time to get that done without docking you guys any points. So I went through and looked at the ones that have already been turned in, and we can kind of do a critique if you want a critique on your particular project, but you guys can take till, I don't know, I guess till the 21st, because that's what's fair, but you're going to get new assignments, so don't get too behind or you'll just have a lot to do. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else have a question before we start? Okay, well, I'm going to get into the content for this week. Feel free to ask questions in real time if you want to, since you're here. And when we get to the technical stuff, if you want to follow along, let me screen share right off the bat. So if you guys go into the week 3 module, I'll have all of the content right here, and I'm going to actually go over it and do a little bit of a lecture. And then with the assignment, if you guys want to go ahead and pull this zip file right here, so that when we get there, if you want to just follow along, this is not a complicated assignment. I do have an alternate version of this that I'll show you that you guys can do if you want something more advanced. But really, this is just a simple skills practice to get used to bouncing between the 3 programs. So you could do it along with me tonight if you wanted to. So for now, I'm just going to go over some of the material. And like I said, this week's all about the 3 main programs and when to use them where, and just some really basic information to get you guys going. So if you go to the week 3 module, you'll see, oh, I want to start by saying, don't forget to do the discussion boards as well. That is how I'm going to keep a record of your attendance. So I extended last week's because there were only 7 participants. And then I have this week's up already. It should be live now. And so don't forget to do those. They're important. And they're just little things to keep you guys thinking about design and checking in to count for attendance, since I make Zooms optional and then I post them for you. So that's just like your task for the week to make sure that you're doing something attendance wise. So I will actually go to the discussion boards, and that's how I'm going to check off attendance each week. So don't forget to do those. So I put that at the top of the module this week. If you're in the module on Canvas, you can see it. And then there is a PDF with some information, and it's really good content. I don't make you guys do a textbook for this class. It's really not a textbook class, but this is a little bit of information that'll be really helpful just getting you started about thinking about what program to use for what and when. What I found is most of you guys will have a favorite program, and you'll do everything or try to do everything within that particular program. And you can get a long ways, but it's just, there's tools for the right job that make it so much easier. So some key points for the week to learn. So we're going to go over Photoshop, and Photoshop is a pixel-based image program. Everything is named just pretty much just like it sounds. And you will see in the module there are some graphics and things you can read. Let me jump back over to screen sharing. So I put in a couple files like this. This is a quick guide to logo file formats. And this is what I actually send to my clients. I started sending this with their logo files because I just assume that everybody knows what I know. Like, I know what a PDF is, I know what an AI file is. There's all this jargon and vocabulary that comes along with our industry. Well, the majority of people don't have experience working with these types of things. So I had a couple clients send the wrong files to print, thinking they were going to order their own sign, and they sent like the PNG file, and it was small, and they didn't know what the size was and all of that, and it came out terrible. And so I started sending this PDF along with their final logo files so that they know what to use each file for and when. And so I have this linked up so you guys can read this too, and you can learn about the different files. And so we have Photoshop, which is a pixel-based program. It makes things that are JPEGs and PNG files, and a Photoshop file is a PSD. So that is the working layered file that comes along in Photoshop when you're actually working within it and you don't want to flatten it and save it. A PNG file has a transparent background, so that's what you would use on a website or what you would drop into something if you want that background to show through. And then a JPEG file is just a flat file. So then we have Illustrator, and Illustrator is the drawing software, just like it sounds, Illustrator drawing. And that's where you actually create files like any illustrations. You create logos. It'll be a vector-based program. So what vector means is that you can scale it as big or as small as you need to. Last week, a couple of you in Illustrator, let me bounce over here. I'll show you guys this in a minute. You guys file new and see how I have inches here? A couple of you guys did yours in points. It will default to certain things, and usually it'll remember the last thing you did. So you either did points or pixels, not inches. So if I have inches here, it's 8.5 by 11 page. But if that were pixels, it'd be a much smaller document. So some of you guys, because it was a vector file, I was still able to download your assignment, open it up in Illustrator, because you can open PDFs up in Illustrator. And then I could zoom way in and I could see all your work, just like as if you had done it on an 8.5 by 11 document. So that's the great thing about vector files. Now, if you had messed these dimensions up in a program like Illustrator, you probably would have realized it faster, one, because it'd be tiny and pixelated, but you also, I wouldn't have been able to open it up and still see all of that information just at a smaller scale. So let me make a new document real quick. This is an 8.5 by 11 document at 300 DPI. Now, DPI is a phrase you're going to hear me say a lot. It's dots per inch. So screen resolution is 72 DPI, whereas print resolution, you want it to be between 150 and 300. So that also changes the size of your file. And that's, you need to know like where you're going to output it at when you select things. But anytime something's going to get printed, make sure it's 300 DPI. And Illustrator, I believe, defaults to that unless you select pixels. So, okay, I'm going to make this square here. Fill it in with a color. Now this square, I can make this is 8.5 by 11 for perspective. I can scale this up. Say I want this square. Let's pretend the square is a logo. I can scale it up and make it as big as I want it to be. The size of this is not connected to any pixels. Now I can also make this as small as I want it to be. And then I can zoom in here and it still retains its size. In Illustrator, the stroke will stay the same weight, so that's what changed. I can actually let me bring one of these images over so it actually looks like something. So if I copy that, oops. Paste it over. So this little bunny, I can make this as small as I need it to be. You can't even see it right now if I'm zoomed out, but if I zoom in, it still retains all of its characteristics, even at a tiny, tiny size. If I zoom out to the whole page, you can't even tell what it is anymore. But when I make it bigger, all the information is still there. So that is the difference between a vector file, whereas if I take this bunny, copy it, and come over to Photoshop, and see how it's a 230 by 324. This is the last thing I made. 72 resolution pixel size file at CMYK. So normally in Illustrator, it will probably be working in RGB, which again, let me find that on my desktop. This explains the difference between the different color formats. So Pantone matching system, those colors are based off specific ink colors, and that way you know it's a universal color code across the board. CMYK is actually created from the printing process where you're mixing cyan, magenta, yellow, and black ink together, and then RGB is mixing the light. And then hex is the code that we use to get those RGB colors, and they're used primarily in web design. So if I bounce back over to Photoshop, let me just show you what happens to this bunny when it's pixel based versus vector based. And I'll make it 300, and I'm gonna do an 8.5 by 11 document again. Create that. And real quick, I'm going to stop screen sharing, just making sure no one's in the waiting room. Okay, we're good. Go back to screen sharing. Okay, so here's my 8.5 by 11 document in Photoshop. I'm gonna paste that bunny in. So the cool thing about the Adobe software too is that it's all integrated together. So I can select Smart Object, which will keep that bunny a vector-based graphic, but I'm just gonna make it pixels right now to show you what happens to pixels versus what happens to vector files. So this bunny came in and pasted it. It's very clear, the lines are clear. But see, if I zoom in, see those squares? Those squares are actually the pixels, and that's what's making up this bunny image. So now if I take it and I scale it up, you'll see those lines are no longer smooth and sharp like they were when I was in Illustrator scaling it up. And if I scale it all the way down, and I zoom in, see how it starts to get pixelated? And now that I've zoomed it in, there's no way I can scale it back up and get that same clarity that I had before. So that's why you need to know when to use Illustrator versus when to use Photoshop, and when you want something to be pixel-based versus vector-based. So logos are almost always vector-based. Some old companies or people that get their logos made by someone who's maybe not a professional or use like a third-party website, they might only have a JPEG or a PNG in their logo. And I get a lot of clients with logos like that I just have to make work because it's now their logo and they've established a brand around this. So sometimes you have to make it work, but this is why we need to learn when to use the programs, because if you guys are designing a logo, you should start in Illustrator and make it a vector-based logo. So then InDesign is the only one that I would say doesn't have a super obvious name, but InDesign is layout software. And what InDesign does is makes a page and you pull all of your information from other sources. So this right here is your assignment for the week, or if you guys are feeling adventurous, you do have the option of creating something like this. So I don't know if this looks hard to you, but it's actually quite simple, especially if you're getting comfortable in Illustrator with the pen tool. Let me bounce back over to the module, make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Okay, so the key is to learn the difference between Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign. So Photoshop is for pictures and images, Illustrator is for vector graphics and illustration, and InDesign is to lay out all of those things together and to add the text. So resolution is the DPI, so you need to know the difference between when to use 300 resolution and 72. And then your color formats are very important, especially when you're outputting things. In this class this semester, color format isn't a huge deal because you guys don't have to print everything. You're turning everything in through PDF online. So it's not that big of a deal, but it's important, especially when you start doing like the brand guide and things like that, to know what your colors are so that you know how to replicate them for various things. And these are all downloadable. You can download the key commands for each one of these if you guys started getting comfortable with that. And then this is the PDF to this file format guide. And it's just really helpful if you guys are starting out to learn what the various files are. So an AI file is what an Illustrator file would be when you save out the working file. The difference between an AI file versus a PDF or an EPS is that it's the actual Illustrator file and you can only open it in Illustrator. Lots of people have the ability to open PDFs on their computer so they can look at your file and see what it's supposed to look like. Not as many people have software that can open an EPS file, but it's really good because it's more universal for things like an embroiderer or a sign maker or any other third party that's going to take your design and print it or implement it somewhere. They'll probably ask for an EPS file. All right. Any questions about anything so far? This week is just a lot of info, and I want you guys to start getting more comfortable with these three programs. So if you don't have any questions about that, I am going to walk you through the assignment so you can actually follow along and do it with me if you want to. So let me see here. There is a video for this in the module that you guys can do, so you can follow along with that. Let me go back to screen sharing. So you'll see here the assignment does walk you through, and there's a video for this. I added a new EPS just today. I have always used zodiac signs in the past. I felt like it was an easy thing. Everybody has a birthday, so they could pick one, and it kind of gave them a good starting point for color choices or any like associations that may come along with that. But I didn't think anything of it. And last semester I had someone who felt uncomfortable using zodiac signs. So if you don't like zodiac signs, it's totally fine. It was an arbitrary choice by me. And you guys can instead use these animals. But the point of the assignment is that you'll have to use an EPS and photos and text and put them in an InDesign document. So let me go to my Finder here. So you'll see if you downloaded that zip file that you'll get a folder that has all of these things in there. So there should be a Start Here document that you can open up. The InDesign file, INDD, that's the InDesign file. If you guys have an older version or a not updated version of InDesign or a newer version, open up the IDML and that should work for you too. So it looks like this. It's the same as this before you drop in all of the different components. I think I even included project text. You guys, these elements of this page are totally arbitrary. Pick whatever you're comfortable using, pull off text from the internet, write something yourselves. It's totally fine. But I did include all the pieces just to make it easier. And then you'll see photos. So these will be the high-res background photos that you can drop into this big circle for here. And I want you guys to add a photo of yourself, and then you're going to add this EPS file and you're going to overlap it. So when you open up the document, it's going to look like this with everything just in frames. So I have 3 different versions of these EPS files for you. I'm going to bounce over and use the animals just because they're open already. And I'm going to take one of these, and you guys should be more comfortable in this now from your experience from the last 2 projects using Illustrator. And I'm just going to make it a color. And I think I'll make it, I don't know, let's make it pink. I'm going to copy it over, Command C, File New. and then Command V, pasting it in there. And because it is an EPS file, it doesn't matter really what size this is on the page. I can scale it up if I want to, but it doesn't matter. That information is there and I can scale it in InDesign. And let me see, I can't remember if I told you guys. Okay, so I tell you to actually place it in a 2" by 2" Illustrator file, which is just something that's more convenient and like a clean design technique, but I'm just leaving it in this 8.5 by 11. You'll see that it's not super relevant. So I'm going to save it here as bunny, put it in the InDesign assignment, and I'm going to save it as EPS. Then I'm going to come over here to InDesign, and I'm going to select this frame. This is where I want it to go. And I'm going to hit Command D or File, Place, and then I navigate to where I saved that file. So I've actually saved it on week 3 InDesign assignment, bunny, and I open it and there it goes, it's dropped in. You'll see because I did not size my artboard in Illustrator to 2" by 2" like I told you guys, that it actually gets cut off. But that information is actually there. You just take this black arrow and you extend the margins of this frame and it's there for me. So you can actually crop things if you need to. And you'll also see that it's transparent. It can overlap this circle and you can see through that image. Now I'm going to pick a JPEG from the folder and you guys can replace any of these images. But I'm just going to pick, I gave you some high-res images to start from. And you'll see here, it also does not fill that circle. So what I want you guys to practice doing is you take this white arrow and you click on the JPEG itself. You take your scale tool and you actually fill in that circle so that it covers that whole thing. So InDesign is just made up of frames. It's not, this JPEG does not exist within this document. It's just pulling it from the source and placing it there. And that's how you can move through massive pages, complex brochures, and things like that without like placing the actual JPEG files within the document itself and making a huge file. So I'm going to scale that to take up the whole circle. And you know what? Do I have a picture of myself in that folder? I don't think I give you guys a picture of me. I didn't plan for this. Let's see. That's an old picture. Here's what I'm going to do, because I do not know where this picture is and where it exists. I am going to do a quick 30 screenshot of this picture of me. It exists on my desktop now. Do you guys know how to screenshot something? I can show you that if you want to know how to do that. And I advise you guys to find your picture and put it in that zip file in the same folder just to make it easier on yourselves. But I'm going to place it from my desktop where I just grabbed it. And then again, I didn't size it, so I used the white arrow, grab it, and then scale it in there. And that is essentially the assignment. The only other thing I have to do is add text to this, but that's all you're doing. You're going to practice opening up an EPS file, and it will look like this with a multiple options on there. You're going to pick one of those options. You're going to put it in a new file and change the color. And then you're going to pull from those source files and you're going to add a picture, you're going to add text, and you're going to add another picture. And your picture should be on top, the circle should be on the back, and the EPS should overlap and show the transparency. It's pretty simple, but it's going to get you guys started on learning and jumping between the 3 programs. Now, if you guys want a more complicated option, you might have seen this. So let's see here. Let me just make sure we don't have anybody waiting. Okay. I'm going to go over this version of it too. If any of you feel like that's pretty advanced, if you do the first version, very easy. This is just an assignment. It's just, remember, assignments are just to learn a technique, and projects are where you can get really fun and creative. But I showed this version one semester, and a couple students really liked the illustration technique and kind of ran with it. So this is an illustration I did of Lady Gaga, and then just a random concert image I found. And then I just put her name and some text. So again, you will still need to do the 3 components. You can either do this in place of the other assignment or in addition to, if you're really feeling interested in that. So I had at one point, hold on, let me find it within here. Oh, and then this is that same project saved out as a PDF. And you'll see, again, the overlap, the JPEGs, and then the text. So your final assignment should look similar to this, just with your own information in there. Okay, sorry guys, let me find it. So I have these videos, and for some reason, and I finally realized why. Oh, here's the other one. I don't have the ending to this, and this is because I recorded this live in class at the time, and it was in the lab. It wasn't on Zoom. So I recorded this as I was doing it, and it doesn't have an ending, but I can give you an ending now, and I can upload these as a separate YouTube video. But these videos essentially show you how to do that illustration technique. You hear me talking? We don't need to hear me talking twice. I'll just kind of fast forward. So I found this image of Lady Gaga, and I will upload these videos and just kind of quickly edit them together. And it's just a tracing technique. You can see as I kind of scroll through this fast, I just pick out the main shapes and color and fill them in. And it's really kind of a fun style. And it's similar to what we did in the first assignment, where we're using the Pathfinder tool and the pen tool to get these shapes. And then using layers to send things forward and backwards. So that's as far as I got in this first video. And then there's a second video where I finish up her face and I zoom in there. And I'm just color picking directly from the image as I go. And that's as far as I get, as far as me making this in real time on these videos. But you can see here, I actually finished it. So I didn't record it all at once, but I saved this then as an EPS. And then I brought it in here. And so now it's an illustration that we can overlap and make this. So this and this are exactly the same. It's an EPS and illustration, a JPEG, and text combined. So if you would rather do something like this and pick a famous person and do an illustration and then add a photo and like a quote or something, you're more than welcome to take this and make it something that you feel is more fun. Or you just get it done and do your practice and follow along doing this. And I think that's it, guys. Questions? Did anyone try to do the InDesign along with me?
I tried, but I got a little.
Was I going too fast?
I tried.
So yeah, sorry. I said to do it along with me, but then I know I do stuff pretty fast. But there's a video for it, so you can start and stop it. And then I will upload this whole thing too. And then those 2 QuickTime videos that I recorded in the lab. and I'll just put a note on there that these aren't finished, but you can come to this Zoom to kind of see. But really, it's just more tracing and then saving it out and then placing it in that InDesign file. So if anyone wants to do it that way, you're more than welcome to. But that's your task this week, is just to practice going between each program and figuring out what to do in each one.
Got it.
Cool. Yeah, I know this is kind of short. Usually if we were in the lab, what we would do then is everyone would try to start the assignment and I would walk around and be like, nope, here you go. This is what's going on, and help everyone. So it's a pretty easy week, but it'll set you up for success down the road.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. So yeah, that's it. You guys are free to go. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions, or feel free to stick around and ask questions if you have anything. All right.
Cool. Professor, I was trying to submit my homework, my assignment in, and my laptop died. And so I thought I submitted it in. That's why I came into class a little bit late, like I think it was like 4 minutes late. And I thought I submitted it in, but then I was trying to make sure I did, and I checked it, and apparently it didn't go through, and it says my assignment was late, and it was submitted 5:53.
So it's gonna say that it's late also because I changed the time, but I mean, when I usually don't like get too hung up on those, especially this week because I had the time wrong. So it's totally fine.
Yeah, because I was just like, I thought like I had enough time and stuff like that, and I was like, okay, it's done. And then I was trying to submit it in, but then my laptop died, and then I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure it's submitted it. And when I logged in, I went back up on Safari and all that stuff, and sure enough, it was like, I think it was like, it wasn't even turned in or anything like that. So I was kind of like, oh crap.
So full discretion, this is how I grade. So if I go to grade your assignment and it's either like by the date, like I sit down to grade, or I look at it and it has like days late, or it's significantly late, then I'll deduct a few points within project specs. So your project will have, you guys haven't gotten the grid yet. I will post that. I grade off of like, let me open one up. But it's not arbitrary. So there's like 4 different like things worth 5 points that you have to hit. And the last one is project specifications. And so usually I'll just deduct a couple points on project specifications if something's significantly late. But for the most part, if it's like a couple minutes late, like I'm not even going to pay attention to it. So you don't have to worry about that. Plus, if you don't like your score, you can always redo it at any point in time.
Yeah, can you double check if I did submit it? Because at this point, I'm like, I'm kind of like, I just want to make sure. Trust but verify.
Let me check on it for you. Oops, wrong thing. There we go. Okay, let's see. Oh, there. Ooh, that's really good. It's here. This is a nice one. I like it. Yeah, and it says late in red, really threatening up there. Just ignore that. You're fine. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, because when I I finished it, I zoomed out, and then it gave me a headache. I didn't know what I did.
That's great. That means it has a lot of movement. It's really good. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. All right. I'm gonna go get started on the next project then.
Okay.
Have a
good
great
luck.
day, Professor. Enjoy your week.